Ms. Douglas, can you call the roll, please?
In here. Director Shoemaker.
Here.
Director Wyatt.
Here.
Director Salvaggio.
Here.
Vice Chair Vidal. Here. Chair Sloop.
Here.
Chair Clark.
Here.
Charles Steele.
Here.
Gina Day.
Here.
Ginger Fish.
Here.
Patrick Haley.
Here.
Thank you.
This is the meeting of the West Linn-Wilsonville School District Budget Committee for fiscal year 2026-2027. At this time, we will open it to public comments. And just a reminder, we are here as a budget committee along with the board, which comprises part of the budget committee, to discuss the budget for the upcoming year. And we'll be limiting comments to that subject. Athena Contreras? Oh, while you're coming up, to foster a climate that encourages and values public input, the following items are shared with those providing comment. Thank you for taking the time from your day to come and share your voice and take part in informing the budget committee of your opinions, thoughts, or recommendations regarding the district's budget. Your involvement is valued and appreciated. If you haven't signed up yet and you want to, please let Ms. Douglas know. The public comment time is a time for the budget committee to collect information rather than engage in a dialogue. We encourage speakers not to mistake our silence for a lack of interest or care. We are listening and probably taking notes. If you are asking the district or budget committee to respond or provide information, please provide your contact information with Ms. Douglas so that someone can follow up with you. It's not a time for singling out individual district employees or students for complaints. If you have complaints in that area, please don't mention them by name. I'll probably cut you off if you do. There's a district complaint process and we can help you with that to resolve individual situations. Public comment time is for addressing the budget committee and not an audience. All comments will be given their due respect by the budget committee. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. If it's not enough time, you can provide additional information later. All right, go ahead.
Okay, last year I came to the budget being fully prepared to go with every detail that I could find with post-it notes on the pages with questions. This year I'm taking a different approach. And that's because this year I want to focus on the budget narrative in general. This is what you see at the beginning of the budget document. It also is what is said in the superintendent's budget message. Really support the beginning of the public process. These things are not easy for anyone. There are 150 pages to go through and connect revenues to expenditures to real life decision making that affect our families, our teachers, and our community at large. My concerns, as many of others have heard before, stem from a difference in perspective between the narrative that's being brought forth by leadership and what I feel like I am seeing in the ACFR and budget documents. When it is said that our school budget is funded through a per student calculation, this appears to me not to tell the whole story. I believe it is important to the public process to have a clear understanding of the revenues and expenditures, which means it is important to recognize the difference between local revenues, state school fund, the equalization that occurs between the two, and the local option levies. The local option levy is important because it is not included as part of the equalization formula that adjusts based on property tax revenues. It is separate, and it should be recognized as such because it is an important part of our local funding, not contingent on the state school fund at all. It is completely separate. With that said, while we've been fighting over our classroom preschools for sums of money that don't even make a 0.5% of our total general fund revenues, we are also writing property tax exemptions for growth in Wilsonville. And I recognize that this is a good process. It could be a very good process. I don't know that it makes as much sense to not look closely and have everything graphed out and understood for the public to really be able to analyze. I wish that we could see how compression might affect our local option levy, which is the first to get compressed in any situation with property tax exemptions that lower the assessed value. And I'm sorry I don't have this all written out, but I believe that it's very important in the public process to include all of this in the budget narrative, to not frame our revenues as being contingent on a per pupil basis, because it's not even 40%. It's like not even, most of our tax revenues are local funds, most of them. So I think we should be focusing on the growth of those property taxes and watching it grow and making sure that we don't consolidate too much. Because we can negotiate on any of the assessed, property tax exemptions that we're gonna give to encourage growth in a place like Wilsonville. And the other reality is that I think that the people that we are most wanting to help, the students that are gonna move into those affordable homes when we do that, may be offset by the fact that we're not getting revenues from those apartments for a number of years. And if it was 8 years the first time, or 24 years the next time, or whatever it is, we need to be looking closely at that and understanding it as part of the public. So.
Thank you. Jeffrey DeWill, please come up to the microphone because it's, yeah, sure, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I don't have anything written down, sorry, so 3 minutes is gonna go by a little fast. We represent Playmakers, which is a sports organization. We're Westland based. We're fairly new, a couple years into this, so we've recently kind of experienced the squeeze on the gym availability and gym space and stuff like that, which we 100% rely on. We need gym space in order to keep our leagues going. We started with basketball, and we're eventually going to make our way into football and soccer. And with the recent, I guess, the two schools that are closing that are coming up with Stafford and Bolton, it's going to really affect our ability to run gym space scenarios. So we just kind of want to make that, I guess, apparent to the budget committee and everyone else that's as you start to allocate funding. Please keep in mind that we have, local sports organizations like us that we rely on gym space, and that's sort of the lifeblood of our business. If we don't have gyms, we can't obviously schedule games for kids. So we're Westland based, we're local, and we've got about 200-300 kids right now in our basketball program alone, and we're looking to kind of expand and grow. So, and partner Brian Conklin right here.
I have a pretty good background in basketball and what youth sports means to me and what it means to us. And I've seen a decline in that and to focus on how we can get children the ability to get space to exert themselves in an athletic manner. I think it's very important. It gives lots of values that not only carries them and helps them in the classroom, but also helps them later on in life, especially with myself having a young daughter and what it means for women going forward and what it shows for them being able to, what they've done at a young age, involved in sport and how they've been able to find higher places in boards and being in positions of power as they get older. So it's just something that's very important to us, and we just don't want to feel the squeeze of that. Like I said, we're growing, we're doing it for the right reasons, and we just want to make sure that these kids are given the ability to express themselves and given the time to run free after school when they can sit in there and talk that. This gives them a chance to be coached, and it's a big focus of us to get the right coaches, to give the kids the right ability to function and hopefully create a better community for all of us as they continue to grow older. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I want to say thank you to Andrew. We work with this team very closely. They've done a great job supporting us, so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. John McCabe.
I couldn't obviously look at anything until the budget came out, but there's a 6.83% increase in the GO bond request for this year. And the calculations that were done didn't include the income balance, did not include the interest income, which, thanks to your Department of Education, the Department of Revenue, and I wasn't going to give up that interest along with that bond. And now it is. People are supposed to be paying less, and they are not this year because the calculation was done wrong. And it was not done like the way it was done last year. If you go back to the budget last year, it's done completely different. So you can see from my list here, it was substantially less. I guess that's, they can't say we'll take care of it later on. It needs to be taken care of tonight or the next day you meet. Because it was done wrong. The way I look at least $1 million should be reduced on just this issue. The other issue that I looked at, contacted the state of Oregon, and this area that was correct, is the SIA grant. You get about $80,000+ a year for our charter school, Three Rivers. Part of the budget, they get none of that money. Over 80,000 of the SIA grant, they've lost over $500,000 that's supposed to go just to the charter school. Instead, it shows up all in the SIA for this school district money. You go to the audit of Three Rivers, it's not there. It needs to be there because that's how Oregon Department of Education gave us the money. And then another strange issue is that, sorry about the staff sports, is our revenue that we get from the athletes that they participate keeps on going down. We must have less and less participation, and it needs to be addressed. If we don't have as much participation, what can be done? And one of the issues that's done by Beaverton is the schools that are below a certain quantity of people, they can compete at their local school and still go to their neighborhood school. But they go to their magnet schools, such as Riverside High School. There's so few competitors there. And in fact, some of the girls are on teams at Riverdale because they can't get teams together here. But they are not allowed to compete at Westland or Wilsonville unless they are dropped, unless the school district tells the USAA that they are not part, they're not competing. Then they can compete at Westland and Wilsonville, otherwise it's Riverdale, which is, I have no idea how much money.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who came tonight to provide public comment on the budget?
So I would like to ask, I've never been to a budget meeting before, but I would like to ask for more money for our arts programs and specifically for our music program. First I will talk about the benefits. You may not know about the music program that we have that's vertical in nature. It begins in middle school, goes up to the high school. We have students who are graduating from high school, going to college with scholarships. They are going into music education. They are becoming band directors themselves. They are returning to our community and they are mentoring our younger students. It is phenomenal. Our instruments break over time. They need maintenance. So that's, we need more money for the actual instruments themselves, but also we need full-time instructors at the middle school level. We need consistency. We don't need part-time instructors just together. We need a solid foundation so that when these kids start, they feel supported and it is consistent for them year after year, and they stay. And they stay, and they get to high school, and they succeed, and we are state champs. We are district champs. Please go to a concert. It's just, they're a pit orchestra for the musical. They're at football games. They're at May Day. They're at the graduation ceremony and common circumstance and the jazz band. They're at basketball games. The list goes on and on. So benefits to the brain, helps them with their math, with their language. It's more than just music, but the music is enough of itself, but there's so many more benefits. So that's just me personally. Okay, now, the money or the lack thereof represents a lack of philosophical support for the arts, so we need to support it. We don't need to just maintain it, we need to support it, we need to increase our support. Individual building principals should not be allowed to cut funding or staffing at one school that will adversely impact other schools. There's a problem in the process. If you cut most school music funding, you're placing licensed but inexperienced or unqualified instructors in positions outside of their comfort zone. So kids will not, they'll quit due to a less positive experience. So also, where's the equity between schools? The middle school offers are now very different. Kids are being denied access to a robust music program that's been built over so many years, based entirely on enrollment boundaries. So if we're only offering, if you limit the options in middle school, the kids literally cannot sign up for band because they can't work into their schedule. If you only offer it 3 periods a day, they need 5, 6 periods. So class sizes doesn't matter, fun, the music, thank you.
Don't walk away, please. Could you give us your name?
Oh yes, my name is Trisha Barisco.
Could you?
And I have 3 students. One is now in college, is now tutoring, she's giving clarinet lessons to like 10-year-olds in California. And she's not studying music, but they love it so much they keep going. And I have a senior who is graduating, and she'll be playing Common Circumstance with the jazz band Friday night, 8 o'clock. And then I have a son who's a freshman who is going to keep going. And it is phenomenal. We're so thankful, but we need to keep it going and we need to grow it. We don't just need to maintain it and keep it on life support. We need to grow it.
Thank you. Dr. Hughes?
Good evening, Budget Committee. Happy June month. So over the last 2 weeks, Dr. Ledford and myself have received close to 50 questions from all of you, and even slightly more because each of the questions contain multiple questions to it. So thank you so much for your thoughtful questions and also for being so engaged in the district budget process for fiscal year 26-27. So I would like to take the opportunity to summarize on the key theme of the question and the district response so we can enter into the budget 26-27 and have a clear and understanding of the same page. One of the themes is the school consolidation saving. It come up multiple times, and the consolidation of the 2 primary schools provide us with an estimate saving in the approximately of 1.5 million. And that saving in primary include the school core team, custodial and maintenance services, utility and supply, and perhaps some special positions such as like PE, music, and certain special education. But very important to remember that these savings do not come from reducing classroom teacher or peer educator, because all of this staff, they move with the student. So that is the theme of the consolidation of the school. The second one is our question about assessed value and property tax. So the assessed value, sometimes it comes in higher than 3.5%, or the collection rate on property tax sometimes it could come in more than 97%. But when the district put the budget together, we have to be conservative. We have to not only look at the history of the asset value and the collection rate, but we also listen to the recommendation from the Department of Revenue. So for the budget, what we use is we focus on 3.5% of asset value and 97% of collection rate. So I would like to use the opportunity to one of the public comments about the local option. The local, let me bring up to the question and then look back. Another question relating to the property tax and asset values is the recording between the district and the county. So when the county, they put their report together, the county combined the general fund operating with the local option levy together. So you can see that on page 5 under the annual comprehensive financial report. On that page 5, you will see it's not in the budget book, it's in the audit document. So I can send you the link. But I think when we respond to that question, we provide up to page 5 and page 57. Page 5 is the way the county report, and they combine the operating general fund property tax with the debt service together and then local option. In the past, the district report under page 57, we combine the general road fund operation. Oh, actually, the county combined the general fund operating and the local option tax together. And then the second line is the debt services. For the district, we combine general fund operating and debt services together, and then we separate the local option. So if you look at your budget document on page 338.1, budget at a claim for general fund, you will see that we have a line item to say local option tax, 14.4 million. So for those who say that we did not see the district report the local option tax, we have to go back to the page 3, budget at a claim.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, in that. So under the general fund revenue, you see the line item strictly for the local option tax. And in our financial system, we reported under Fund 101. We keep it separate from Fund 100. Even though it's a Fund 1 SS is a general fund, but we say 100 for district operation and then 101 strictly for local option tax. So although the way that the district and the county report, we use different format, but the total is the same. The combination, the total is the same. So it's not different presentation, just presenting the same amount of the property tax revenue. The third team is focused on the budget reduction and the long-term sustainability. Our question focus on 9.5 billion and how the decision will make. And Superintendent Douglas addressed this into multiple format section that lay out clearly how is the reduction made and the decision behind it. The key action includes a 2.65 million that shifted expenditure from general fund into the bond fund. And we identify eligible expenditure from general fund into the bond. And then the one-time reimbursement from the Western City on the legal fees, it's about 900,000 or 910,000, but we also have the interest earned, so the actual number is 921,000. And that is the email that I sent out to the budget committee on May 19th. On the book that you walk away on May 18th, the 921,000 from the piece is still in fund for 17. And then during that meeting, I presented to you that we will shift that money to general fund to help with the ending fund balance. And I follow up with the email. So we will do that. That will help bring our ending fund balance from 3.2 billion to 4.1 billion for 26-27. The next item is 740,000 supplies and expenditure that applies across the district to limit the impact, because we don't want to just to the school building or to the department. So everyone has the same, a little bit of reduction. Last but not least is the 500,000 saving on approximately on the sustained preschool, and 145 approximately saving on the 2 primary school consolidation. Beside that, we also have staff reduction. We have 14 license, 1 admin, and 4 classified. And all of this is aligned with enrollment. So if the financial pressure continue, then additional difficult decisions have to be made, and that will involve staffing and program taken. The theme question number 4 is focus on staffing and class size. Question was raised about staffing level and classroom impact. So the district explained that any change are strategic and based on enrollment. We plan to maintain appropriate student to teacher ratio, and then we expect to keep class size within the contract limit and similar to other school districts. The overall is to minimize the impact on our students while responsible addressing their budget constraints. The question number 15, the question on the planned reserve versus the ending fund balance. So as you listen to my monthly report to the school board, I always use ending fund balance as a tool to communicate, and it's easy to understand for everyone. So when we say our total revenue coming minus our anticipated expenditure, what's left, that is the ending fund balance. But because the district have to follow the guideline, it's called the PBM, Program Budgeting and Accounting Manual from the state, and the state use plan reserve. So it's the same tool, it's just the same meaning, the same concept, but just different languages. The next theme question focus on cost pressure and operation. And as you know, when we go into each fiscal year, there are costs that are unpredictable, or there are costs that are out of our control. Like for example, we have a contract with for students that is the transportation. We have the rising expenditure under the premium insurance. That is based on the market driven, and also based on the claim experience that we went through. Also, the utility costs, that is unpredictable. We can receive the rate from PGE, but then the rate will change throughout the year. Unemployment is also unpredictable. It's either required that we have to budget because this is a mandatory. So any unused money in the unemployment will remain in the general fund. And last but not least is the PER. You can see like the PER continue to be a significant long-term cost driver. The net to that is the UAL, that is the unfunded liability. That cost over the last few years, it got offsets because we have 2 per side account. We have 2004 and 2021 side account that have reduced our UAL rate. But the 2004 will be expired by the end of June, by the end of fiscal year 2027. So our rate will go up. So right now, what the district try to be proactive is to engage with ODE and other school districts. Hopefully, we will have information to present to the school board soon and go out for the side account to have to go lower down the rate. The question about the how we track the revenue and expenditure about the two small schools, Bolton and Sanford, for this coming year. So in the budget book, you see that we create Fund 226. That is a fund isolated just itself, so we can track any revenue coming in and any expenditure spending out. So for any given time, we can report that information to the school board, to anyone. Similar to that separate account, we have the foundation. We also use the separate fund account in the under special revenue for the foundation, and the same purpose to track the donation that they contribute to the district and the expenditure going out. So in closing, the budget prioritizes protecting the classroom experience. And also, at the meantime, we are navigating new thresholds with declining enrollment and review grant funding and raising operational costs. So with this challenging, the district places a strong emphasis on community input, feedback is gathered through surveying and listening session, and that input help guide decision. So now let's take a closer look on how the budget aligns with what we heard from our community.
This actually came up as a question from Director Shoemaker, and we just said we'll address it here. I don't know if you want to repeat your question.
I will, and I
around.
was hoping that it would be addressed
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So I'll just read the question. Budget approval is a major responsibility of school boards. Beyond financial oversight, our role includes ensuring the district spending priorities are consistent with community desires. During times of tight funding, there will be spending trade-offs. The 2026 budget survey results, those are in section 4, are one way for you, the superintendent, to understand community priorities. As I look at the survey results, I do find them consistent with what I hear in the community. The survey asks community members where they would prioritize spending at a time of budget reductions. So, Superintendent Ludwig, will you describe how this budget as presented is consistent with the top themes you found in the budget survey results?
So I know it can be tricky to toggle between survey and then finding things. So we just created a one-pager for you. On the left-hand side are the survey responses, kind of put in order by how the community prioritized those areas. And then on the right-hand side, where you can see that reflected in the budget. So we just kind of put this together, and then we can open it up for discussion or questions later when we get to that time in the agenda. So I'll just kind of explain the first two rows, then I think it's self-explanatory from there, since you said that. So for example, of the 292 responses we got from the survey, the one that had the most priority kind of ranking was hiring quality staff and effective classroom support systems. So how would you see that in the budget? Well, I guess you just, staff is funded in the general fund. There's definitely a staff funded through the local option levy and special revenue. But to make sure that we have quality staff, it's really about a process, a rigorous interview process, looking at experience and quality resumes, and then retaining that quality staff through workplace satisfaction. So how we intend to, questions that come up, or even working with our associations to make sure that staff feel that when they're here, they can do their best work and then they want to stay here. So competitive wages and benefits, and then also making sure they feel supported by all this group of other personnel around them, like school leaders and office team and specialists. So that first one is really maybe a broader response of being able to just point to something and say that's where quality lies. I will say that when you look at teachers with more experience, we do as a district rank higher than the state average consistently. We're about 2 years above what the state average would be. So the state average is about 12 years for teacher experience, and we have about 14 years. So I think, we are attracting folks with more experience, and they're also staying. I think another way to look at it is when we've had to make reductions as well, unfortunately, because of seniority, we do retain our more experienced staff. So that's, you'll look for staff throughout the budget in a variety of ways there. In terms of effective class size ranges, again, that's a priority that we make, that you'll see reflected in the elementary school budget, the middle school and the high school functions 1111, 1121, 1131, taking a look at year to year. What does that reduction look like? And is it more closely aligned with declining enrollment versus significantly beyond that kind of percentage ratio? And then also in our SIA grant. As a school board, you've made a difficult decision to prioritize class size and consolidate schools. So how do we put more of our staff in our buildings so that we can keep class size down and make some of those decisions, and that's reflected in the budget. And then you can see the next one is around mental health and behavioral needs, where you can find it in those different functions and how we prioritize that. And then year to year, those numbers, we reduced a social worker last year, but we've kept the same number this year. We have one less counselor, but that's reflective of declining enrollment in one of our schools. But otherwise, we've kept a priority on counselors. We've kept our school psychologists, our regulation skills coordinators, but we are adding one there. And of course, keeping a priority around any types of special programs that students might need in that area. So I'm not going to read through each of these line items, but maybe that helps when we get to the discussion time. I just wanted to hand that out when we get to that portion of the agenda tonight. If there's anything in here that you want to drill down, but I will try to bring these two documents together, the survey and where you might find that alignment in our budget.
Thank you. Both. We're going to move into the deliberation portion of the meeting, and at some point later, after we've discussed additional questions or follow-ups we have, staff has one more thing that they'd like us to deliberate about, and we'll address that also in this period. I just want to get clarification before we begin to move into individual questions and follow-ups. Could you remind us which of these we're just getting tonight and which we already had in terms of the questions?
You already have everything. This is just a hard copy.
Oh, we already had all these. Nobody provided additional ones. Perfect.
This is just if people want that hard copy again.
Great.
The
Okay.
only thing that did not get in this packet are the attachments that we referenced in Director Salvaggio's question. Those would come electronically around looking at the capper and seeing those references to county taxes.
Right, which you referenced in your conversation. Okay.
Those documents are not in here, but you did get those attachments.
Okay, perfect. I thought that if we just start with Gina Day and move around until we've exhausted our questions.
You're not ready to pass.
I don't think I have any calls.
Okay.
I think my only question, and I don't need this level of detail, but consistent with Director Shoemaker's question about aligning the budget to what we heard in the budget survey, can you also share a little bit more about the SIA grant and how we see our prioritization in that grant, and then also maybe just a reminder of how we report out how we're spending that money. Because I think it is important for us now, this budget deliberation time, but then also in the community to think about how that really is being invested specific in our district where we can get the most.
So if folks want to turn to special revenue 271, I think it might not be, it might be 270. Okay, 271. So that's on Roman numeral 3 dot dash B dot 33. So 3 dot B dot 33. So there are 3 state grants that we've received, I would say, in the last 8-9 years. The first, if you remember, was the High School Success Grant, formerly called Measure 98. It was directed to Oregon schools, very specifically around increasing graduation rates and addressing chronic absenteeism. So that's one of the grants, and that was what's called a supplemental grant, meaning you couldn't take people already in your budget and now just shift them there. It did require hiring new staff on top of what was already in a district's budget. So it meant going out and looking for additional staff to support the efforts around raising graduation rates. So that's one of the grants, and the people in there have to be very specific towards reporting to that end goal. And so you'll see a certain percentage of that grant had to go towards high school. So you see a lot more of high school staff funded in that grant, but a certain percentage was allowable towards middle school, with this idea of middle school feeds into high school. And so a certain percentage is allowable for middle school and used for some transition staff and activities. The SIA grant came next, which is the one you're talking about. It was part of a larger funding mechanism in the state of Oregon around student success that was based on a corporate activities tax. And so with that corporate activities tax, the state collected funds to be used in these buckets. And one of the buckets was towards early childhood, another bucket was towards some funding of smaller grants that the state would allocate, but the largest was the SIA grant. And that went out to schools based on the same methodology that we would use around demographic support. So not every district got the same amount. The high school success grant, if I can back up, was based on every senior. And so every high school student. So it didn't ask questions around poverty level or other kind of demographics, but it was student-based. The SIA grant took into consideration this idea of equity and need as well. And so you can see maybe districts smaller than us getting more than what we would get, but based again on need. In that SIA grant, there were 2 key areas. One was to address mental health and supports students, and the other was around closing achievement gaps and addressing academic disparities and working in that vein. And the SIA grant, unlike the high school success grant, could be, you could shift some of your people from your general fund into that grant. Because at that time, which is often a lost narrative, the state school fund did not give as much to schools, and they gave us the SIA grant. Because of that reduction in the state school fund and this grant coming in, which was funding corporate activity tax, a different revenue stream, the state allowed districts to shift staff into that grant, but the staff had to be aligned to what the purpose of that grant was. So it didn't become a supplemental grant, it became a grant that you could actually transition some staff into. And that combined, those 2 then made up what typically would have been the state school fund. There still is this narrative that it was in addition to, but actually that year that it came in, it was actually almost like a carve out. And so we would have gotten perhaps a larger percentage from that biennium, but instead we got a smaller state school fund, and then we got this grant with its eligibility requirements. Because of the purpose of that grant being around mental behavioral health supports, we have counselors in that grant, we have social workers in that grant, we can have nurses in that grant, school psychologists, and so we have mental health specialists in there. And then because it's also about closing that achievement gap, you can use it for classroom teachers to reduce class size, which we have done in our primary schools. So it's classroom teachers in there to reduce class size. We have some ELD teachers in there. We funded some librarians in there. And then some staff around special education. So, and that's pretty typical, I think, of a range of staff that other districts find eligible. It has a broader eligibility bandwidth than the high school success grant. And then the third grant that came locally to us a few years ago was the Early Literacy Success Initiative grant. And that also has some restrictions to it around either literacy curriculum or professional development training or reading coaches. And when we go to apply for, we get the grant, but when we go to report on it, we just have to demonstrate to the Oregon Department of Education what categories that we're funding with that grant. That helps.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, so.
I ended up talking about all three, because I think
yeah.
they work together in different ways, but also have separate.
The reason why Dr. Ledford talked about three grants together is because in 23-24, the state recognized that, in the past, each grant has its own obligation requirement, but then the state recognized that there's a relationship between the grants. So in 23-24, they all the grant together, they call integrated. So when you might hear some people talking about integrated grant, that if they prefer to just three grants together.
Yeah. So I think to come back to your question on the board gets what's called the district integrated plan, where we have to speak about our long-term goals and performance targets, and then also how those funds come together alongside our state school fund to meet those goals.
Thank you. Those were all my questions.
Okay, since we're on the Early Literacy Initiative grant, I am interested in hearing about how we're targeting those funds this year. I did notice that there's 1.45 FTE, and we no longer have literacy coaches. So I was hoping that you could explain how we're targeting the funds.
Yeah.
With this current budget.
So every year, when we go to fill that out, we can adjust what we do with those funds as long as we report to ODE. And so right now we've got some support staff in there, and we have some what we call extended year literacy learning, which is also one of the eligible buckets that we can use for in the summer. And now that we've made this decision about teacher librarians, we can go in and adjust that grant if we feel we want to just report some of that tier 2 support and some of that partial funding. So we're still working with that. Part of putting a budget document together is saying it's there, this is how much we've got, we're going to spend it, and we haven't refined yet the exact proportion of which people and how much, because people also change jobs. And so sometimes who was funded the year before, if they're not in that job anymore, we've got to take them out, and then we can reassess and decide what's needed this year, and we have that flexibility.
I am a little bit concerned, just because I am a literacy advocate, I can't take that away from this, but I am concerned about the effectiveness. We have, adopted the structured literacy, and it's had great results. We've seen the results in our classroom, but a lot of our intervention goes to paraeducators who haven't been trained yet. We have trained up some of our elementary educators, and I think that I personally, thinking of just a 1.45 one person and how we can impact an entire district of 8 schools, and where the effectiveness of how we can actually really increase and put more backing behind it could also be educating the people who are actually giving the intervention. And if there's a way to actually move that into more training, since they have a very limited training bucket for our paraeducators, I think that would give us momentum to keep up the work and to actually move the needle in a way that we are really progressing our kids and our district's outcomes.
Yeah, no, your question and your concern is very validated. When we build a budget together, the idea in the book is called Good to Great, and the author focus on get the right people on the bus and then assign a seat for them later, based on their skill and knowledge. So the same is like putting the budget together to ensure that the budget align with the district mission, align with the survey that we receive from community member, and how we can support the program. And then, like Dr. Ludwig mentioned, staff is moving. It's like right now I have this name in decline. Tomorrow they might resign, or something happen, the name changing, or the title changing based on the program need, right? So I think at the budget committee, how we come together and say, do you have enough dollars to support? What is the ending dollar for that program? Instead of looking at deep into the operation, because deep into the operation, that will be my monthly report to the school board. And even though the monthly report is changing every month,
Board Member Savato has a question.
Just to build on what Ms. Clark was saying, though, I think while we understand the necessity of some flexibility to allow for changing circumstances, we also need to make sure that flexibility doesn't extend so far as to say, well, this person's not available, and so we're going to change the whole thrust of the program into something else. I think we agree that a specific person's name might be this or that, but we still want, I think, the thrust of the program to remain intact to a certain point, because I wouldn't want a situation to arise where we all approve a particular budget with a particular thrust in terms of literacy, and then because of changing circumstances, the district staff completely reasonably and within the bounds of what we put together and adopt, change it into something else. We're still going to have to be sitting here having voted yes on that budget, even though it may not reflect what we initially intended. Not that anyone was trying to play hide the ball or anything like that, but I think it's incumbent on us to push and see how locked down we could possibly make that if we decide that is in fact a priority.
So this is a grant that has, tight restrictions, and we're not going to deviate from those eligibility factors. So we'll go into early literacy, and staff does need to be able to make professional decisions around, as data comes forward, how to adjust those funds. And the state allows for that and wants us to do that. And so that was what that comment was about, is that year to year, the district does get to make those decisions around, was it reading coaches now? And it's not, so it's funding it here or there. I would love a lot more money in this grant. When you look at the amount, it looks like a large amount, and then you see it only funds 1.5 people, and you have 8 primary schools. What do you do with that? If we get 1 person for every primary school, there'd be a little bit more of a different kind of maybe an allocation, but something that only funds 1.5 people. And then is there something that's coming up also for staff around some more training, or how we're using those funds. So we're always listening to our principals, we're listening to our staff, we're looking at those eligibility requirements. And the thing that is guaranteed is that money will go towards early years.
Did you have other questions?
I do. I was just hoping, just because one of the main topics that have been happening recently has been the instructional hours in the school. And before we pass any budget, I just think it's important, because we are passing it, that we are a budget for the hours we have already appointed for the calendars, that it'd be nice for the public to know that we are meeting our instructional responsibility. So I was just hoping you could speak on that.
So that was a question that came forward, and I was able to respond to that, yes, we are compliant for this year. As folks may know, the governor passed an executive order changing some of the definitions around instructional time. The State Department of Education put in a temporary rule to that executive order for the year 26-27, but of course that rule could sunset by October. With the the State Department of Education, we continue to meet compliance, so we're fine there. But we're not going to depend on the State Department's interpretation of the executive order, and we are going to go back and look at the literal executive order and make the adjustments necessary that allow us to meet instructional hours without professional development, the 30 hours of professional development conferences. So that's some work that staff will be doing, and then we'll be reporting to the school board.
I'll ask one more question, then can I come back later for questions? Is that okay, or do you want me to keep on going?
Go ahead.
Okay, so one question or concern that I have about this budget that is kind of an overarching topic that I think about all the time is our enrollment potentially will continue to go down. I do have concerns about how we are streamlining processes so that as we have potentially lower funds coming in, that we are still supporting our entire spectrum of learners, from our tag all the way to our special ed, and that we're putting systems in place that every building is using the same language, the same tool, so that it makes everything streamlined and easier. It's on my heart and mind all the time, so that we can make sure that we're getting outcomes for our students with our programs across the board. But one thing I am really curious about is we have spent a lot of time and energy this year on the Urban Collaborative and looking into our special ed programs and getting feedback from the community and from our teachers. And unfortunately, we're not getting that yet. So I'm kind of curious about where there might be room in the budget for alterations depending on what comes back from their recommendations.
So you had two questions. One you had it's good, Karen. You had an observation around enrollment, and this is not an exaggeration. I think about this district's budget enrollment every single day. It weighs heavy because it's an enormous responsibility and it's a reality. And it's not isolated to this district, it's across the state. And folks can read the news, it's often also across the nation. So everyone is in the same position. I think I handed out to all of you the other night the list of districts that are making reductions. What does it mean to have a long view around that? Unfortunately, we get funded biennium to biennium. And if you go too deep with a plan, the community might push back and say, you don't know what the next biennium is yet. And we don't want our children in a certain program or situation to have the effects of something that even as a district, you don't know yet is going to happen. And so we're all caught in that reality, unlike a private business or something else where you can see your funding maybe downstream. We are funded biennium to biennium. And I think the governor is very clear that school districts feel they need more, and legislators hear that. And at the same time, the state budget is what the state budget is, and we're just a portion of that. So the tool that the school board does have, as you're aware, is looking at enrollment and looking at what we have right now And if we end with $4 million in our ending fund balance, is that enough for the following year? We don't know, because we don't know what our next biennium is going to be. And so it's hard to know what that revenue allocation is going to be. But we want to act with fiscal mindfulness and conservatism, that if it's the same as it has been, which is maybe a 4 or 5% annual increase, that's definitely not the same pace of expenditures, which are going up 6 to 7%. So we're all hoping it'll be a bigger allocation than that. And then in terms of the district streamlining, I think we all experienced this year, a board making a very difficult decision around how to preserve programs and staff and class size, all the things you mentioned. Because we want it all. You know, I don't think there's a single parent out there who's got their hand up to say, I'm okay if you cut, you know, this program or shortchange this service. We've heard about music tonight, we've heard about athletics tonight, and we've heard about literacy tonight, and all of these programs certainly have a value. It's not anything that I can point to that is an example of wasted revenue or time or fluff. Urban Collaborative is a group that we have contracted with to do some inquiry around how things are working. They're not going to present us with a report that says, here's where you put your dollars and your funding and your staffing. That's not their design. They work across many states. They're not going to come in and tell us how to spend our money. That's not their job, or to put staffing. They are going to look at best practices around inclusive practices and let us know what they've kind of discerned and noticed. So their feedback is going to come right alongside what we've heard from staff around support they feel they need. And I did share the budget presentation that we have put some already in this budget. We have put in 3 more learning specialists, another regulation skills coordinator, and restoring another person to our 9th grade success team. So we anticipate that those are things that came up already in the listening sessions from our staff, and that we would anticipate Urban Collaborative might take note on, that staff brought up to them. And so that's already in here. And then in terms of any kind of training or professional development, we have a ways to go through that in our grant.
We'll come back to you.
Oh, yeah, pass me.
That was my question. I'm going to pass it on.
So my question was about the Urban Collaborative, like, are we allocating some funds in case there's some recommendations on how we implement some changes? But also, can you remind me where the funding is coming for the full-time librarians, the 3 learning specialists, the regulation specialist, when we were having to make the 9.5 million budget cut this year?
So in the budget reductions, we went ahead and took those out. And it's not unusual when you make reductions then for people to say, we also need to, we just heard something and we got surveys from the community, we did all these listening sessions, and we need to shift some money towards some other staffing. Our teacher librarians, returning our teacher librarians to licensed positions was a decision on several parts. One, we've heard from that smaller group for years that they feel so stretched across schools that they don't feel they're as effective as they could be. And we have paraeducators doing their best to work under the direction of very few teacher librarians. It also gave us the opportunity in some of those listening sessions to think about tier 2 literacy support, and licensed teachers can provide that. And so restoring licensed full-time librarians can allow them to not only do the work of a library and the advocacies around that position, but also provide some direct literacy support, K-12, to students who need that. I think we've also heard in our community about concerns with AI, and do our students have critical thinking skills and discernment around authenticity of what they're reading and seeing, and having now our full-time licensed librarians back in those roles, they have the opportunity to provide those lessons again around digital citizenship and critical thinking and discernment around AI and those tools. In addition to what we've been hearing too around concern with screen time and technology, this is another group of professionals that can help students really reflect on where they're getting their sources, but also how much time they're spending on digital information or digital screen time and the value of in-person interactive. So I think our community is at a place where bringing these positions back to licensed professionals is a way to attend systematically and consistently with accountability to some of these areas that are rising up, and having one group that can be meeting regularly about it and making sure that we're getting those lessons and those things taken care of. So how are we funding them? Well, we already have a smaller group that we've kept librarians who have their licensure. But to do this, we need to add some more FTE. And I think this was in one of the questions, and maybe I did the mathematics. So we need about 6 more FTE to make sure we have 14 teacher librarians. We have 15 schools, but 2 schools will have 4.5, Riverside and Pond. We currently have 13 paraeducators working in libraries, and so this is a trade-off of paraeducators for licensed staff. So if you get about 2 paraeducators for maybe 1 teacher, that's going to be the majority of where we get that funding. And then maybe there's a lovely foundation that could make a donation. I mean, there's some ways that we'll look and see where in our grants there still is opportunity for maybe some of that remaining funding to be there. And that's also where we'll fund those other positions, because sometimes when a person retires, it's at a higher salary and we can put somebody else in the grant. By the time we get all of that figured out, we get a few more positions. And so that's where we're hoping for those other positions. The plan is for those to be through the grants.
So if you want to look at that, is you can see under function 2222, we have 5.75 FTEs in there, and some function in the general fund, function 2222.
That's library
That
services.
is library, and 5.75 FTEs in there. And then also we have 2.25 FTEs in the SIA grants, so that makes up 8 FTEs, and then the 6 vacants.
Could you give us the page numbers?
38.34.
That's the function 2222 in the general fund. Roman numeral 3, capital A.34. That's the page number. So general fund function 2222. That's where some of our librarians are right now.
So this one, and then I say there is more in the SIA grant. Okay.
Okay, and then another question that I have is regarding the community survey response number 4 about programming, performing, and visual arts, athletic, and activities. Are there any programs that are being reduced in that one? This thing that you gave us.
Well, no, we kept our dual language programs that had come as a recommendation to the board to suspend the Chinese dual language program, and I rescinded that recommendation, so we've kept all of our dual language programming. And world language is a tricky one, because sometimes there's students in a high school that are interested in a language, and there's only like 7 or 8 students who want maybe French class that's at level 3 or 4, so it's combined. So we're creative around some of our world language, depending on it's an elective when we get beyond those years, and so we work creatively with try to meet those needs for students. And then in terms of choir, visual arts, band, we have not eliminated any program. If there's any change in FTE, it's based on enrollment and selection by students. So year to year, students can opt in if they want to take jazz band, as we've heard about, or choir, or more art. And so we have this nimbleness around our secondary teachers where we try and match interest with staff. And then sometimes we just have to say we can't offer, another section of something because we need staff allocated something. So we're really doing our best to keep all things for all kids as much as possible year to year looking the same, but it's also driven by student interest. And so, for example, Wilsonville High School, we all of a sudden just have a real surge in interest around our early childhood program that we've had to shift some staffing. And so we now have 2 teachers who run some of those classes, and it's around a CTE career pathway, whereas 2 years ago, we only needed 1. So if students are migrating with that interest, then it's probably because their interest is maybe lagging somewhere else, and it doesn't mean it's not a worthy program. It's just that group of students who maybe are finding themselves connected together or to a program. And so we do see some of that responsiveness to student interest, but not a total elimination of any program. So far, we're very fortunate with some of the ways we have budgeted and made reductions that we've been able to keep all of our programming, except the suspension of preschool, as you know.
Yeah, I think I'm very grateful for our school district, because if you read about all of the other schools and their budget cuts, and they're eliminating so many great programs, and that's where the students feel a sense of belonging and purpose and team building. So
we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't have to be. It will depend on progression over the years with our enrollment as well as state funding.
So thank you.
Oh yeah, I've got some questions. Thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge the complexity and constraints that you work in. It's really amazing, and I appreciate the process and how hard you work and articulate everything, Dr. Hughes and Dr. Ludwig. This question doesn't align my head and my heart because it has to do with transportation. I'm new to this process, and for me, I've been in finance for 20 years, and I'm learning about the school district. So I could really only take a financial perspective to this. So I went through previous budgets and just kind of looked for variances and consistencies. And one of the things that just jumps out to me the most is the allocation to purchase services, which is line 300. And it looks like it's in 2023, 22, 23 budget. It was 13 million. We're proposing 26 million this year. It's increased by roughly 90% or a little bit over 30% annualized over the last 4 years. The largest attribution to that line item is the, 331 SSF, or reimbursable student transportation, which in 23-24 was 5.8 million, and we're proposing 9.2 million this year. So that annualized, if you look at the last 4 years or 5 years, or roll the annualization of that, it's way more than 7.85%. So I'm just curious, how did we double the budget for that? And it used to occupy about 10% of the overall budget, now occupies about 16%. So an additional 6, if you were just annualize the 22 figures, it would be about 12 to 13% of the budget. So that's roughly what the ending fund balance is. So it's a meaningful amount of the overall budget and change over the last several years.
And that is an area that, when you contract a service, you invite, organization that they have their overhead, they have their staff who need, pay increases, they have liability insurance, and we all know transportation is a big one. You just get a few very high profile, unfortunate incidents, and it just skyrockets, and then you become kind of subject to some of those changes around insurance. So some districts run their own transportation company. We have, as long as I've been in this district, contracted that out, and I'm grateful every day. If this board chose otherwise, that might be my sign to move on, because it's just, it's just another large group of employees and equipment and rising prices with gas and inflation that they're constantly sitting down with us and saying, this is unfortunately what we're gonna need to charge. And we did a number of years ago do a comparative around other transportation companies, and First Student came out just the same, if not better, in terms of quality of service, retention of their bus drivers. I think families feel it when they just see, revolving faces all the time, but it's a pretty stable employee group. They feel well cared for in terms of their company in our district, so we're very fortunate. So after we did that comparability, we went for the board and renewed the contract with First Student instead of changing. And actually others have reached out to us and said, tell us more about First Student. So I don't know if everybody's always 100% happy. They might always think the grass is greener somewhere else, but we've been pleased. The other thing that we've asked them to do in their reports consistently that they now provide for us, I think it's once a week. I don't know, Jeff, I'm looking at you but they do an on-time rating. So they tell us how many routes they have, how many bus drivers they have filling the routes, if they're short, if they're not, how many people they have in training, and then how much their percentage of on time. And that wasn't always in place, and we demanded, but we said we've got to have a little more accountability towards that, and they've really increased that. I think we're down to maybe one, like a small high school that still has like a 95% on-time rate, but the rest are really a big improvement. So we're constantly working with them around quality of service for what we're paying, but really it's market driven when we look at costs of other bus companies. One of the reasons it's hard to look back longitudinally is during COVID, a lot of very strange things happened around transportation. So all of a sudden we had this real funny gap of data. And I would say 22, 23, we kind of restarted around what it meant to have reliable data around the company. We also then opened Riverside recently, which meant a few more routes. We'll see now what happens with the consolidation of these two schools. We're looking all the time at ways to make some savings. We tried something with high school this year called opt-in to busing. Parents didn't seem to like that, and so we thought, well, maybe we were going to opt out. What was the other way around? We didn't opt in and opt out.
We've done opt-in and we were exploring opt-out.
Yeah. And that's, we often hear community members say, I see a bus go by and there's only 2 kids on it. The reality is we're obligated to provide busing after a certain distance, whether it's 1 student or 50 students. And then one of our commitments is not to have a route that's longer than 45 minutes. And so hitting all those spots and the starts and stops, it doesn't take long for that time to add up. So there are some things we've added into our contract that then generate the need for more routes because of a priority to our community around length of time that students have on a bus. Some districts, they have an hour and 15 minutes on a bus, and they're willing to kind of exchange that for cost. And we may come to that, and we'll hear about it, but that may change in the future if we want to drive down some of those rates, because we are driven by the number of routes. Just for this group to know, when we put together our transportation costs to the state, we get reimbursed for that arrival, dismissal, bus transportation, 70%. So we might put something we put it in the budget, we get reimbursed that 70%. However, anything outside of that, activities, athletics, competitions, if we make it to playoffs, now we're doing some more busing, that is all 100% on us. So those are things that right now, it's an investment that we're making to get kids to those places. That means lots of them, if they make playoffs or state or extend their activities and they want to do something more with speech and debate or cheer or dance or track and field. But that's all 100% on the district. If we are going to bring that down, then there's a conversation around, are we curbing athletics and activities and arts? And that would be a big conversation for the board to have and for us to take a look at. Do you have anything else to add, Dr.
A little bit, you
Yeah.
cover very well. Just a little bit of reminder, because the conversation came up last year during the budget committee meeting too. The thing to remember is because at the end of 25, 26, 24, 25, for students, they went into their negotiation with their union. And because of a lot of them, they have to, how do you call that? Revise their pay scale to their
Yeah.
staff. And then because the staff, they can't afford to live in the neighborhood. But they live far away, like in Sherwood or in Salem, and they ride here to do the work for our district. So in order for students to guarantee quality service to our district and stay on time, always have enough staff for us, then they have to provide some adequate compensation to their staff. And because of that negotiation that they have with the union, so when the district go into the contract with them in 25, 26 for the next 6 years, the inflation kicked into that. So that's why you see why is it from 7 million to over 10 million.
Should the assumption for inflation be adjusted then for that line item from 7.85 to something different?
Oh, you mean for the budget narrative? Yeah, I think it tends to be provide clear information, whoever is you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
Do you have any others?
I didn't.
Okay.
Talk about another complicated one.
Yeah.
Is busing. Yeah.
Did you have any more?
I do. Just, first of all, I want to echo what Tricia, and I didn't get her last name, said about the money for arts and music programs. I don't anticipate there's any stones that we're going to squeeze and get more out of, but I appreciate the kind of held harmless nature of what we've done here. But I just wanted to shout that out because I know that while there's not a necessarily causal relationship between visual and performing arts and STEM test scores, I know that there is certainly a correlation between having more of those available for students and increased STEM test scores. So just laying that out there. My questions, there's a reference to safe rates increasing in one of these responses, and SAFE, at least on their website, believes that their rates are decreasing. And my question was, are we anticipating rate increases that are not yet public? And are we a direct SAFE customer, or do we interface with them through the local government self-insurance pool? Or rather, the special district self-insurance pool?
No, we along with all school districts in Oregon go through PACE. So SAFE is another association within the PACE. They are together. It's like Foghorn, a part of the Western Linn-Wilsonville School District, but they have their own location, they have their own student, and the same with SAFE. So our insurance, you will see we go with PACE, but when we submit the claim will go through SAFE.
Okay. I guess I was.
There is a law that one of our doctor wrote, and I will forward to us because in the meeting with me and Jeff and Jennifer, the question coming up, what is the difference between PACE and SAFE in the district, what is the role? And then he went home and he made the math for us. So I have an email and I will forward.
I would love that because my confusion stems from the last time I was interfacing with PACE, that the School Board Association meeting specifically asked whether they provided workers' comp insurance, and they just simply gave me an answer that, no, we don't do that. So it sounds like they're an agent that they don't provide it, but we get it through that.
So PACE was established in the Oregon School Boards Association.
Yes.
As a way to pool and bring down costs. And as with all the school districts being within PACE, it's supposed to bring down that cost, but it's under the umbrella of SAFE, which is larger than just Oregon. And so I think there's 2 districts that are self-insured and don't use PACE in Oregon, but everybody else does. And when we've asked about is it beneficial to come out from under PACE, the evaluation of that, it would just be devastating. And so we do save quite a bit by being in that pool together with the other districts.
Thank you. It sounds like they give you some half-true information.
Yeah, looking forward to that information.
So where are the rate increases coming from? Are we anticipating those for any particular reason?
Well, there's increases from a number of areas. One, under liability, because we are connected with PACE and under SAFE, that anytime there is a situation that brings a lawsuit to any district in Oregon, all of our rates go up. And then if it's our district in particular, our rates would go up even higher percentage. So one of the areas that used to be pretty low comparatively nationally around liability was around sexual misconduct. And Oregon was very low compared to other states. And in the last number of years, we've actually come right up there to be either middle of the pack or above that. And so that increase has affected all of our rates. And anytime there's a neighboring district that has a very high profile lawsuit, we all take a part of that hit. So being the pool is about, that district in particular takes an even greater hit. So that's one area that we all are seeing rises around liability and insurance. The other is around some claims that we do have in our district that are pretty high cost claims with some employees. That's the role of insurance. And so it's there to serve families and employees and their families in need. And we, just in the last few years, have had some incredibly high claims. And so that does also hit our rates. And the hope is that, in time, families heal and recover, and that we can kind of get, those go down a little bit, but we won't see those till probably next year.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, those are 2 areas.
So one thing that we are very proactive into trying to lower down the premium cost is this year, we asked the broker partner with Jeff and his team to go to each building location and identify what's the value of each location. And is it worth it to insure? Like for example, like in the past, we list everything on the property list, which is could be a threat for 5,000. Like we don't know what we don't know. We have everything available for them. And then when we provide them with a list, they say, okay, look like we insure all of this in case it burns out and everything. So this year we say we would like to make sure every location that insurance is worth it, the value. So if the threat alone is 5,000 and nothing valuable in that, do we want to insure it? And I think that's the work that we've been working very hard, and give credit to Jeff that he goes to every single building. And without the broker, we might not have the knowledge. But with the broker partner with us, then the broker will give us the advice. Yes, I would like recommend you to insure the building because the building look 5,000 value, but the value inside that, like the computer, the furniture, whatever, it worth it much, then we should recommend you to insure. So doing that, we'll be more proactive on saving on our premium. Also, like Dr. Ludwig mentioned about the SAM, the liability insurance it covers 20 million. But because this is a risky area that anyone can come back from any year in the past, there's no limit. And because of that, they say your liability covered for SAM now will be 10 million instead of 20 million. So in order for the district to stay at the 20 million, we have to partner with our broker and buy additional coverage for that. So overall, at the umbrella, we in the progress of renewing our insurance now, and 18% is a recommendation from our broker.
Knowing that we're getting through pace helps answer that question very well. Two quick questions. In terms of that number one priority around quality staff and support systems, has the district received feedback on the current draft budget from either the Education Association or School Employees Association representatives?
They don't typically pour through the proposed budget and give, line item feedback, but they have access to it, and we keep that communication channel open. And then they let us know if they're concerned about it. Because we haven't produced a program or an area,
To be
we
clear,
didn't get that.
no is a perfectly acceptable answer.
But no sounds like we would invite it. So
Sure.
I just want to make a context for, we meet regularly with leaders, they can always let us know. Where we did hear their first reaction of concern was in November when we proposed those $9.5 million reductions. Because we did it so early on, we had input, along the way around what staff were concerned about. They wanted to make sure that if there were reductions, that we worked with the contract and that we preserved as many programs as possible.
And then my last question, we talked a little bit about transportation costs. Back in 2024, the legislature passed a bill allowing school districts to keep revenue generated from traffic citations based on bus-mounted cameras. And I know that there's private entities that will kind of front the costs of installing those and then split the, get the cost out of those receipts. Has the district explored a revenue stream like that, which wouldn't be huge, but might be worth an FTE or two?
So you know where that legislation came from, one of our students?
I didn't.
Who brought it
Go
forward
us.
to, do you remember that? We had a student who brought it forward to the Capitol building, and I think, and Senator, it was Representative Huron at the time, Senator Huron Ms. Linn sponsored that bill, and the student testified and had a lot of data, and it was a great project, and obviously was successful. So we're in conversation with First Student. I think there's always the wonder of who wants to go first and kind of see, does the cost and then the outcome, and then does it get appealed, and now are you kind of opening yourself up for all sorts of challenges to, as we all know, citations. And so we have not been the first out to shoot with that. We're kind of watching to see how it's playing out for other school districts as an option right now, and the cost benefit is worth it for us to then.
I think Hermiston's got them up at this point.
And I think Estacada might be trying a little bit, so we're kind of watching some of our neighbors to see if, as these things roll out and as the claims are, to try to get collected, is it worth it?
Okay. Those are my questions.
I just want to say thank you to everybody in their hard work. This has been a tremendous undertaking, and I just want to make sure that doesn't get overlooked. I know it's difficult, so thank you.
I just have two questions. My first one is the one that I've submitted because I speak about it all the time. I'm very, very concerned about federal and state budget revenue and grants coming in lower than expected, given where public education fits in our state's priorities right now. So I'm wondering, where will cuts be made if we need to decrease the budget any further in 26, 27?
And let my anxiety go back.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, you're looking at two people that are constantly worried about it. It's why we also budget with more conservatism.
Yes.
And some may not see that approach as valuable and want us to have a smaller ending fund balance. But for us, we'd rather not interrupt the school year with making some drastic reductions. I think anyone saying they're not nervous about the state of public funding is not paying attention. And we believe we put together a budget document that allows us to preserve full school year, class sizes that are either similar to this school year or maybe a little lower in some of our primary schools. We'll see how it works out by August. And preserving all of our programs that families have come to depend on, the co-curriculars, as well as the core content, as well as everything from AB, IB, so many things that we don't have to offer, but we do, for those things to still be in place. And if we have to make reductions, what we know we can't do anymore is reduce school days, because the executive order has not taken that, those waivers off the table. There have been years in schools, districts where, in partnership with associations, we get creative around a pay freeze or a deferment. All that does is just kicks the can down the road. You have to come back and then repeat that, and whether that makes it worth it or not. But we believe we've got some space in here. The school board also has other funds that they can transfer funds over. We have an unencumbered, as a board, land account that if you needed to transfer funds and then reimburse that back, which we've done in the past, and we're going to talk about that tonight, is an option. So we have this spending fund balance or planned reserve amount, but we also have some other funds that if we needed to, with a very unexpected circumstance in a year. I think for me, the big question mark is what's the next biennium? And how deep will the reductions?
Yeah, I think it's like, I think for my type of, in my career, when I build a budget, I consider in all aspects and how can we carry, how the budget carry the district throughout the whole year instead of any interruption during the next year or go to the end of the school year. So that's why a lot of time I heard not only from the school board, community member, would just say asset value would be more, collection rate would be more, or the enrollment, why do you use that average rate instead of using the lower? No, so all of the factors in there, how can I assure that to present the budget that sustainable throughout the whole year? And yes, there are some pockets that we can borrow money for the land proceeds, and then we also have the CET fund that if needed, the board can make decision for that support as well. But also to be frugal and then factor in every single thing. And actually, I would like to use this opportunity to mention a little bit about this hangout tonight. Because if you look at the capital project, the past capital project. And under, oh, I'm sorry, under debt service, tab, and then page 3C.3. We have that. So in Fund 300 debt services, we have 5 series that we obligate to pay principal and interest for 27. The total principal is 20 million, and the total interest is 13.2 million. So in total, we need 33.2 million to pay back our debt. But if we ask the county exactly 32 and collection rate come in less, then we need money somewhere, right? So when we factor in 97% collection rate, then when I go out, I have to ask the county to collect 34.2 million for the interest. So that way, when you see interest, of the public company. Yeah. So it looked like 6% going up, but because we have to factor in the collection rate. So to be sure that this budget that will carry us.
And then my second question really isn't a question, it's more of a comment and an encouragement to our community. As those that are watching tonight have seen, you know, the district is facing the same increases that we are, as households are facing. We're seeing increased utilities. We had a very lively conversation about increased transportation costs, which we were all facing, increased health insurance and retirement. And so when I was reviewing the survey results, I saw that 292 people participated. And I would just love our community to please participate in this survey. That's, I think there's a lot of opportunity for more people to provide their voice. And I just encourage people, especially those in my area in Wilsonville, to participate. When I added up the percentages of those people that participated in the survey, I saw a 20% gap with West Linn schools versus Wilsonville schools. So I would just love for Wilsonville community members to please participate next year. Thank you. That's it.
I just have kind of a comment after that of spending a lot of time looking at the budget and thinking about who's at the table and who's putting their voice in. And I think Mike mentioned it, like, did we get feedback from the teachers unions or the unions? And I still am sitting here thinking about how refined we're going to have to get with our budget in the future, right? And unfortunately, board members, that's probably going to be you with all your future contracts asking really hard questions to make sure we can save every penny to be able to get it back into the teachers, to make sure that we're keeping our staffing levels as high as possible, right? And I've always think about why, I'm curious why, or if there has ever been interest in having union representatives on the budget committee, because I think it's strange to me, just as a board or as a budget committee member, to be talking about basically a lot of really fine-tuned labor topics without having them at the table to talk about, is that even effective? You know what I mean? Are we using our money in the right way of what they would want to see, or how they think that it could be utilized in a way that we have better results with maintaining our budget, fidelity? So I'm just curious if that is a topic of conversation that could be had for future budget committee meetings, to have representatives here as well.
So I just want to make sure that if there isn't a misunderstanding by a simple answer like no, that our employees don't have an opportunity to voice. Typically, they look to funneling feedback through union representation and also union leaders. And a big part of that happens every 2 years when we have negotiations. So how we fund their contract is largely also represented here. So they give us a lot of feedback about what matters to them, and then that's constituted into their contracts around class size ranges, workday, professional development, when you looked at those funding amounts there, those are actually in contract. So there's a lot of feedback through our associations, instead of just going to individual, or, y'all come, that there's actually a process for that representative voice to be heard, and it largely happens through our negotiation process, where they say, this is how we want our salary and benefits to be represented in the budget. This is what workplace environment and work day and vacations and pay, and unemployment and workers' comp. There's a lot of things that are also governed by statute and Bowling and law. Budget committee representation configuration is a statute around equal number of board members and citizens who reside in the voting community. It does not include employees outside of that to be voting members of the budget.
Is that the same for union contracts as well? So could a board member, because they're here presenting basically the contracts that are already been written, because a lot of this is actually like the transportation, that's contract. Like a lot of these are already contracts that we have little room at this table to have any like movement on, which is, I completely understand the process, but it's what it is. So the community member could understand that this is like a lot of built-in like background, that a lot of it's not like movable, we could just rip a Band-Aid, right? It's really incredibly complex, the work that you guys do. But it'd be nice to also have like maybe a board member be in the negotiations, understanding the fine-tuned labor of what they've been talking about and why we're picking that, and or how it's been negotiated into numbers, because that's what this really is those contract negotiations put onto paper in a lot of ways, right? I think it'd be nice to see somehow to get that kind of movement. That's just an ask from a community member, but I think it'd be nice to have that voice, if that makes sense.
So I think you have 5 board members here. I think we're taking note of your comments, and they do approve the transportation contract. We get to see that. We get to approve it. And they do approve the negotiated classified and licensed contracts. And they get to see the details of that. Okay.
Did you have any other?
And I don't know, I'm going to speak for the 5 board members if they have a response to that observation.
Good point.
Sorry. There is a couple things that have really kind of hit me this year, and I apologize I never have had a seated table. It's exciting for me. I appreciate your time. I'm thinking about like substitute fulfillment rates, and I asked the question. I don't think I got like a full area, but I think about, are there other labor opportunities if we are getting positions and teachers that are not fulfilled, if we're getting paras who are not fulfilled? I hear a lot about we don't have them in the building currently because we aren't getting all of our paras and the people who call out filled, which is a concern for me for as a special ed minded person who is really considering like, how are we meeting the kids if we don't have the people in the building to service every day as we are funded for, because we're essentially funded for that level of service. So I'm kind of curious to hear, like, is there wiggle room? Are we meeting our needs? Is there wiggle room for more full-time substitute teachers in buildings to secure, especially with an inclusive district with very specific needs for kids, to have more building subs? Does that make sense? I'm so sorry.
So, filling vacancies and call out rates is challenging. And I think it's challenging for every district because there's a shortage. And there was a time around operations where we even explored a contracted service for some vacancy positions, and a group, there are these groups out there that are like employment agencies, right? They have to contract out. And they said, we absolutely can fill all your vacancies if you hire us. And we thought, wow, we can't do it, you can do it. And there's always that caution, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And sure enough, after about 6 months, close to a year, they weren't any better at finding people to fill our vacancies. And so, so we actually dissolved that potential contract. The shift to EduStaff has really been a benefit for us, because prior to that, we were recruiting for our own training, trying to fill rate early in the morning. Our very small HR department was doing everything. And there's very few people in that HR department. And our fill rate was not as high as since we've been contracting with any staff, which now comes out of, back to your question, Patrick, that now comes out of purchase services. That's why there's a change in how much more, because we used to fund a substitute, which is now it's a contracted service. So they have the bandwidth and the time to recruit. They, about once a month, have a training in this building for new substitute teachers, so they do all the onboarding. And we can kind of demand more in that relationship with contracted services around our needs and our priorities. And because they represent more districts than us, they can actually pull from a broader pool. And so they can get, if somebody has signed up, for example, in Sherwood, or somebody has signed up in Tigard Tualatin, they can kind of pull these pools together around substitutes. So they're working as hard as any agency to fill. And I would not be recommending to the board for us to take that back on, because they are showing a higher percentage of fill rate than we were able to. And if the board ever wanted to see those numbers, Shyla could give those to you, but, and it also comes, as I mentioned, with onboarding that's more consistent and training. And so that's where we are with that. The other thing is, if you have a substitute who's long-term, they now, by law, have to become an employee, and you're paying health benefits and everything. So there's that sweet spot of being a substitute teacher, but if we've built in long-term subs or year-long subs, they don't become subs anymore, they become our staff. And then the cost of that is like having just another teacher. And we have to look at the cost of substitute versus the cost of a full-time employee, and there's that balance. There are times when we've, gone ahead and made that decision. There's a time during COVID when there was such a shortage, we went ahead and gave every building had at least one or two substitute teachers, and we just paid them like a floating teacher. We also have done it for the end of this year based on listening sessions and some of the outcomes of that, and anticipating again that low fill rate. We went ahead and said every school go ahead and hire a substitute for your building from now to the end of the year. We hit the sweet spot where it was under 90 days, so it didn't become a full-time employee, and it still came out of our substitute budget. But we did that as a way to just boost some more support for the end of this school year. And we started that, I think, in April. We told people after spring break, everybody hire your best substitute in your building and make them full-time. And if every position is full, then that person can go around and do reading groups, or support in any other way. And if there's a surprise, somebody who didn't fill a substitute spot, then there they are. You at least have one person in your building.
We, when the district decides to shift from internal recruiting substitute to every staff, we conduct several companies, and every staff really outstanding because they have, they very district oriented. They know our district very well, like inside out, and their rep resides in our community, so they know what's going on, not only the district level, but they also what's going on in the community. So that's why the training that they provide to their staff to be sub for us is very high quality. And also, I think Dr. Lethbridge also invite their rep come to our leadership forum.
So not the leadership forum, but some other things.
Yeah, other meetings so they can understand more, engage more in the district.
And their rep, once or twice a week, just sits in an office up here and just works really closely with our HR department, which is great service.
Do you have questions?
No.
Do you have any questions? I guess, I don't know where we are in the process as my first budget committee, but I think you've done amazing work. I know how hard it is. I think that the one thing that I have challenges with in the budget is, and I thank you for answering the questions, because I have a lot of weird questions, but is the targeted grants that are specialized, meaning the early literacy and the title funding seems very, I don't see the impact in the funds, and I'm not sure, just with the staffing, it feels like it, and plus the title funds I know are very, very small for our district. So it's hard to make a huge impact. But it's hard to see how we're actually really servicing those needs with the funds. And that's just a comment for my personal, and I would prefer to see other usage of the funds with the early literacy. That is my personal opinion, but I want to thank you.
I just want to wrap up before we turn to the other issue from the staff on a couple of the public comments. Did you want to address at all how levy equalization works in terms of the general fund?
Yes, I can do that. So in the general fund, you will see there's another one. Under information section,
Section 1,000,004.
yeah, you will see the state school fund. Okay. Yeah,
1,004.3.
There. You're right there.
Oh, there I am. There.
So it's in here. On your left-hand column, under the local revenue and the state school fund was 69.4 million. That's information. The local revenue and the state school fund have an inverse relationship. So together, 54.6 million plus 69.4 equal 100. And then 124 million for our total revenue formula. So when the district receives more in the property, then the state school fund go down, and vice versa. They consider the equalization. Some district and some area that they don't have strong support from taxpayer. So we receive at least 97% collection rate. Some, even the Department of Revenue recommend 94% collection rate, so even would be less. So for district, if they have collection rate lower, then it will be not fair for them, right? It will be affect the students if they don't receive enough supporting from the states. So therefore, they come up with the equalization formula. If you receive less in property tax, then the state will give you more in the support and vice versa.
And then I think that's all I have.
Just a clarifying question. That includes, correct me if I'm wrong, but the common school fund revenue, that counts as local revenue for the purpose of the state school fund distribution?
The common fund is not the local option. Are you talking about the local option?
I know, I was under the impression that the common school fund revenue acted similar to the local revenue when the state was calculating the state school fund.
Correct, yes,
Okay.
yes, they combine together. And then we also have a very tiny county school fund too. So the property, permanent property will be 53.3. That's the estimate number that I provided to them. And then on the common school fund and the county school fund, based on the information out there, we estimate we and then based on the history of how much we received. So this is my estimation that I submit to the state. They combine that three together and they call it local revenue.
So if the common school fund receipt dips, then we would see the state school fund. Okay.
Yes.
What the state is first calculating is your students and the weighted value of your students, and then they factor in teacher experience. And so then there's this whole formula that gives you the 124 million, basically based on how many students, the weighted need or nature plus your teacher experience equals this amount. Now, how much of that did you collect from local? Then the residual is state. And so that's where it goes to, but it has to start with a larger number than they both add up to that.
I would love to explain this with you because this is very fascinating to really go through this table together. Because I remember when I first got a job at the college, as my president said, I want you to learn this one inside out. Yeah, so the same.
Chair Fitch, would now be a good time for us to introduce.
Please. I'm going to check, anybody else need a break or can we continue because we're near? Okay.
We're there? Okay. One item that I would like to bring up to our committees is for those who on the budget committee or on the school board back in 2019 and 2020 during the COVID year. Remember during that time when the COVID hit, the district experienced a lot of unknown expenditure. It's like online curriculum. We never had that before, right? So now we have to look into online curriculum. We have to look into additional staff to support students during COVID. And some small items such as purchasing the outdoor tent to put students out there for lunch. And then also a meal delivered to home for students. So a lot of unnamed and unknown expenditure coming up. So with that, on August of 2020, the district came to the school board and asked the school board to approve the interfund transfer of 1.5 million from the land proceeds Fund 470 to allow us to transfer 1.5 million into the general fund budget to help out with the unknown expenditure. And through resolution 2020-4, you have it in the back under your big question. 2020-4, the school board approved. And at that time, this structure, the district will pay back. It's a 10-year payback, and each year will be 150,000. So the district made 2 payments so far. In 21-22, 150,000, and in 22-23, another 150. So in total, we pay back 300,000. And then the board, based on staff recommendation, fiscal year 23-24, 24-25, and currently 25-26, we came to the school board asking to defer the loan into the next year because of the budget constraint. So in the book that I sent out with you, I did not factor in the 150,000 to pay back. And we are here to provide the information, and we ask in the budget committee to consider whether continued repayment is fiscally prudent for the district, or is the committee willing to consider option to waive the remaining of the borrow. So I will give us a few minutes so you can read this information. And then when you have a chance to read it, then we can come back together and
as needed. If you look at the budget at a glance page in your binders, and that's under Roman numeral 3A.1, so it's really quick after the general fund tab, it's about 5 pages in. You'll notice in that first column, it's this blue one, we did not put, see the payback interfund loan 294? We didn't put 150,000 in there. So if the committee tonight is approving this, they're approving it without that in there. Or, as you have conversation, do you want to direct staff to reinsert that, which means we'd be taking another 150 out of the ending fund balance and putting it back into the land account, which is where we borrowed that money from ourselves. And we would just keep paying it. Each year, the board has said, you know, we think that money is more valuable for another teacher and defer it. And so we've done that. And usually we've built it in, and then the board has allowed us to take it out. We've kind of done it the reverse. We didn't put it in. So at some point, the board will need from this budget committee either some advice around when it goes to the board on June 15th, will it have the 150 in or not? And then on top of that, not for this group to decide, but maybe for this group to give the board some feedback, because we have 5 citizen members. Is this a time for the board to even make a decision around why are we paying ourselves back this 150 every year? We don't see budgets getting better in the foreseeable future, and it's our own money, so maybe we just suspend paying back, waive it, and stop, you know, looking for it every year and going through the formality. We thought this committee has, besides the 5 board members, 5 citizen members who may want to weigh in and provide some feedback to the board. It will be a decision the board would make on June 15th, but you certainly have the benefit of a sounding board here that's bigger than yourself, so.
Oh, I was gonna make a comment, but it sounds like we're gonna save that discussion for a little bit. I just have some thoughts. Oh, great. So, one of the ways we deal with this in like the wealth world is think about like surplus optimization and create like an optionality around it. Like, why does it have to be in advance versus arrears? So if the budget, like this is a forecast, right? So the budget's not actually going to be what we think it's going to be at the end of the year. There's proposed and there's actual, right? So in the case that the actual budget actually creates a surplus versus a deficit, which probably won't happen, then maybe consider the option payback and use that surplus optimized to pay back the land grant. Versus if you're always deficit funding, then that's the easy decision. We ran a deficit this year, actually, we don't need to pay it back. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, there's certainly a way to just not have it in here, and then at the end of the year, look at the contingency and say just roll over 850 in the contingency instead of $1 million. It does mean you don't have as much in the ending fund balance. And how much does the board want in that ending fund balance is always a question. How important is it to refill this back into the land account?
How much do we have in our land account right now?
Yes, it's under capital project 3D 1470.
I'm just laughing because I feel like you have this entire binder.
Yeah, so right now, in budget, we have 11.3 million.
Okay, thank you. 11.3 million. Thank you so much.
So less than that.
Yes, and this one is when you walk away with the book, there's 921,000 for the legal fees for Westland this year. But when under the approved column, that will become 0 because I moved that to general fund.
Okay.
So 11.3 minus 921.
Okay.
And also you'll see, you see the sale or loss of fixed asset is 7.8. It's anticipating the sale of Oppenheimer to go through. But you also, as a board, have earmarked 1.2 million of that towards Riverside sports fields and 175,000 towards another teaching position. So once that sale goes through, you can kind of do the math there and take that out, so it'll go down again.
Okay.
10 million.
But it's sitting in there anticipating that transaction to happen and authorizing it to happen. That's why it's budgeted.
And for your background, the bond proceed monies is not obligation to any, it's not a bond, capital bond. This is the district money from general fund. So throughout the year, like when the general fund in the past, when the general fund accumulate money enough, then the district will buy the land. And then when a good time, we sell the land and then this money grow from that. But original money that accumulated is coming from general fund.
So to clarify, there's no encumbrance on the board deciding to say that what's remaining of the 1.5 million, the 1.3, or what is it, 1.2 at this point in time, need not be paid back to land proceeds because there was no obligation originally on the use of the land proceeds. Is that right?
Correct. The idea of a loan, it was our own, we were just loaning ourselves. Really, it was kind of a transfer, moving from one account to another, and the board authorized that with the idea of then transfer money back incrementally. Because at that time when that happened, we hadn't sold off the lender, and there was a sense of having some asset in there should land become available and we want to jump on and be able to purchase it right away. And so the district has had a long held practice of having substantive enough amount in that account that we could take advantage of land sales when they come up. It's very hard to buy contiguous plots of land that can house a school. And when we were growing, you have to just be really strategic. And then not also contingent on getting approval through a bond, which could come back and say no. So it gave the district, years before me, and school boards a lot of opportunity to purchase land when land came available. And this, it's not for this group to decide, but I think the board just has to make a decision around, is there enough in that account for the next foreseeable future that is available without having the remaining 850 reimbursed into it. If you don't feel as a board on June 15th, you want to make that decision and you just want to keep doing it year by year, that is perfectly fine. But we just want to bring forward the noticing that 150 is not in this budget right now. So if you're approving this document as it is, it's without that in there, and the board would need to say on the 15th, a resolution around waiving it for another year or putting it back in. And then we thought, since we're talking about that, we might even want to say, is it time to permanently say, no need to pay it back at all? And is that some advice you want to give to the board?
So with legal counsel, they've checked to make sure that we're not in violation of any ORS regarding interfund transfers, because this was an unencumbered land bank.
Correct. The district consult with our current legal counsel, Linn, and in the past, we use the loan form, we use interfund loan, and there should be a budget transfer because it's our own money, so we can transfer from one fund to another one. But we misuse the how do you call it, the tone. So in consultation with the current legal counsel, that they provide a draft for the district to present to the school board to come in June 15. If we want to move forward, then we rewording the interfund into the budget transfer.
I just want to use this public meeting as an opportunity to deliberate before we think of acting on this. And I will just say that I love that this is a loan from one unencumbered fund to another. I think that's hilarious and wonderful. My favorite part about this whole thing is the statute that says that there's a requirement that the rate of return on monies in this situation has to either be the minimum rate under the investment pool and under 294.805, or alternatively, whatever else we decide. So, so it seems like we're at maximum flexibility, and I like that, especially in this budget environment. I don't think that we need to make ourselves less financially flexible at this point. And so I would be happy leaving things as is, or as previously noted, making it contingent upon having a good year, or maybe saving some money somewhere that we didn't expect. But I don't feel the pressing need to put this 150 back into the land fund.
I was on the school board when we passed the resolution during that time, and we were just in a different place. I mean, we were growing, we were buying, we were using Frog Pond, we were thinking about how to use those land proceeds, what might be occurring in the future, and we are not growing. We are losing enrollment. There's no forecast saying that things are going to turn around. We have the sale of Oppenlander. Again, those were things that were still in process when this decision was made. And it seems to me that this is a fraught ending fund balance, and my recommendation would be that the board determine that this transfer be permanent, in terms of not waiting for some indication that $150,000 should be paid every budget cycle because of the change of circumstances, not indicating that the land bank is in need of more funds, versus knowing that we need to shore up the ending fund balance so that the next budget cycle, we don't have to cut programs. That's my thoughts. Anything else on that?
This is really an opportunity for the board to hear from the full budget committee, because this will come before you on June 15th, and there's an opportunity just for a sounding board here, other members to weigh in.
I would echo those comments. I think just looking back at the amounts in the public others land grouping, it was closer to 3 million or maybe less back in 2020. And so at the time, I can see why this may have made sense to pay this back. But now we're projecting to have 11 million or so, or maybe closer to 10 million, as you mentioned earlier. So I think that the difference in those amounts is, I think, more than makes sense for this to be considered to be permanently waived. Then we can continue to build up that ending fund balance, and then save the funds for, potential jobs. So things that matter, sports, music, in the future, as opposed to just paying this back and having it be contingent for who knows how long.
Charles, we want to make sure we hear from each.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm old school in that sense, though I get itchy in the idea of borrowing money from ourselves and then not paying ourselves back, knowing that this money is set aside in a relatively special account that isn't necessarily, at least my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the state does not give us money to then go out and purchase land. So any money that we have in a land account and if we waive it, it's gone. That money can't then, we have to find a different mechanism by which to refund it. So this seems to be the only way outside of selling our land to be able to purchase land in the future. So to me, it feels a little bit kind of like, raiding our pantry and then being like, well, it's all our food. I'm like, well, no, you need shelf-stable food in times of emergency. I don't have the world's greatest optimism for the country's economic outlook. So I do believe there might be a need and an opportunity that faced our district in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, 2008, to purchase land at what could be considered a fire sale price that might benefit us in the future. So I like the optimization idea. That would be my preference, is see what we have at the end. We did just receive a large sum of money from the city of Westland. I think the city of Westland and Linn-Wilsonville are very favorable to our district. And I think that we're trying to make sure that we're accounting for things that we've done in the past to work towards the future. Seems positive.
I really appreciate that recommendation. I just want to verify either general fund and fund 470 is like checking and saving account. It sits in together. So when we have money, we can transfer a little bit more from checking into saving. And then if we feel like the saving not earn enough interest, but checking is, then we should. So we just keep very minimum in the saving. The same with the fund 470. So right now we have no need to purchase any future land. Right? But the need is in general fund. But later on, let's say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when we find another piece of land that's so promising, and we really want to buy it, and the land proceeds have, let's say, 13 million, and the land sell for 15 million, then can general fund have extra 2 million to support? If the time comes and that is yes, then it could happen.
There's also another mechanism. A lot of school districts purchase land through their capital bond. And so they put a message out to the community, we're growing, we need to build a school, and then within that capital bond is the cost of building a school as well as the cost of the land that they're eyeing. The risk with that is if the community says, no, you don't have the school, you don't have the land, and so what this district has just done for years is said, let's just take out that factor about the land and even purchase things that we don't even know we might need 10, 20, 30 years from now. And if we don't, then the district has the option to sell it. So there are other mechanisms to buy land. Because there's also loans you can take out if you're really tight with that, just like others do. Yeah. Interest-based loans.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. Good luck on the 15th.
Did everybody get to care? No, care.
I'm a little concerned just because I pretty much know what the community's going to say. Why didn't we take money earlier? Or why don't we take more money out after this point in time? Because we know we're going to be tight. We're going to continue to be tight for a while. And so I can just see it being they paid themselves back. And I think everybody thought that the land bank, my earlier perception was the land bank was a land bank and it was only meant for land that was the only intention for, and it really couldn't be used. So this was a one-time, possibly COVID acceptable solution. And then it was meant to go back because it had to be a land bank fund. That was my old perception of it. And that's the perception I've carried the whole time. So when the public has been desperately wanting us to keep their schools open and not knowing that we're still going to go down a longer term of struggle coming forward, I think that it gives a very interesting perspective for the public of how they're going to perceive it if they think that if it's now this idea that we can actually take from it. And that's just like from my background of like what I expect to come out of this conversation from the public side after whatever decision is made. It would be nice not to have to pay ourselves back. I do think it's pretty confusing from the public perception. So just put that out there.
Yeah, and we took it years ago with the intention of over 10 years doing that. And then no one ever expected that after COVID, we would lose, 1,500 students, and this idea of now we're not growing anymore and we're shrinking. And so it is just a different time. Does the board feel that they had some input?
Yeah, I just
at
wanted
least
to-
for tonight?
Yeah, I feel like I wanted to thank all the budget committee members for their input. I just wanted to piggyback on Ginger Fitch's comment about population growth and how it's not growing. And I agree with you, and it really isn't. And I just want to give another layer to that, given what Kara Clark just said about, this land account. And so I just want to explain something to the public, given what I do in my profession. I work for Randall Children's Hospital, and right now we have a level 4 NICU, which is the highest level of NICU in the state of Oregon. And we, like other NICUs across the state, are seeing exploding populations. Like our NICU is basically, we have a floor and a half of NICU babies. So what that means is the people that are having babies are of later maternal age in this state, and those babies are being born with higher needs. So what that means is usually, we are an inclusive school district, which means those babies are going to turn into kindergartners with even higher needs, which means the money that we have maybe needs to go to special education and not land. So I just want our community to think about the future, and maybe we will have less kids in our district, but those kids are going to have even higher needs. And what does that mean for us when private schools aren't really taking those kids that have more specialized needs? And that's something I wanted to say tonight about our role in public education versus private schools who may not really educate those kiddos with special needs. So just something to think about, like where our budget needs to go in the future. Do we really need to save it for land, and or do we need to save it for special programs? So just something to think about, and that's all I wanted to say.
I'm going to look forward, this may come back and bite me in the ass in 10 years, but excuse my language. I'm going to look forward to the day when our enrollment is growing so precipitously that we need to pick up land in a hurry. That will be a much different discussion, and I think maybe a little bit easier of a discussion, although I'm sure it's going to come from some things. Having said that, I'm going to bring back something that I say every few months, which is I would love to see an asset management plan applied to our land fund, not to hem us into anything particular, but in order to provide a framework of what we kind of expect the prospectus of those dollars to be.
So I think we're ready to move on and vote on the budget. There's a motion if someone wants to make it in our materials.
As I recall, this has to be read verbatim. I'm happy to do that.
And then you can offer to do it again on June 15th.
I have problems with that many numbers in a
Yeah, it's
row,
a
getting
lot.
them right, so I would appreciate it.
The math teacher can do it.
This is the motion to approve the West Linn-Wilsonville School District 3J 2026-27 budget as proposed, establishing the maximum total expenditure for each fund is as follows. General fund, 115, as proposed, $159,198,917. Adjusted, $921,148 to an approved amount, $160,120,065. Special revenue fund, $31,546,860 proposed, and that would also be the approved amount. Debt service fund, $46,838,104. No adjustment, so the approved amount remains that figure. Capital projects fund, $87,858,758,000, with an adjustment of that same $921,148 down to an approved amount of $86,937,610. Total budget amounts then $325,458,960. $442,639 as proposed. And the approved amount also $325,442,639. It is further moved that the approved budget is to include an assessment of the permanent tax rate, maximum rate, of $4.8684 per thousand of taxable property value, which will raise approximately $53,304,759 for general fund operations, and a debt service fund tax levy of $34,328,325 to service the district's general obligation bond long-term debt. Be it further moved that the Budget Committee approves the local option tax passed by voters on November 7, 2023 to levy an additional tax of $1.50 per thousand of assessed value, limited to $5 per thousand of real market value for all taxes subject to educational limits.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion?
Someone out there is thinking, if I ran my business this way, then I'd be out of business. And I want to emphasize that not a lot of local businesses have their budgets handed to them, are told not to compete with other businesses, have arbitrary dollar amounts and restrictions and mandates sent to them. But this district staff has handled all of that with aplomb and put together what I think is an optimal budget. I wish that we didn't have to let anybody go. I wish that we had a lot more money in the coffers. But with what we have, I'm going to be thrilled to vote yes on this. Thank you.
I want to say that I understand that we are adopting a budget that does not include the $150,000 payment on the transfer from the land bank from 2020. And I would agree that I'm very concerned about our shrinking ending fund balance. I'm amazed at how we've been able to maintain licensed staff levels at the levels we have, not eroded programs that are dear to our hearts, like music and the dual language, and I'm also in agreement that this budget reflects the priorities of our community and thoughtfulness of the situation we find ourselves in.
Thank you. Director Shoemaker.
Aye.
Director Wyatt.
Aye.
Director Salvaggio.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bell.
Aye.
Chair Sloop.
Aye.
Kara Clark.
Aye.
Charles Steele.
Aye.
Gina Day. Ginger Fitch.
Aye.
Pat Haley.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
And that's the close of the budget committee.
I know, you're like, oh my God.